Hello, everybody. I'm going to talk today about this topic, your body's clues to healing. So our body does give us clues as to what may help us heal. And I'm going to explore this in this live session. I'll share an eye-opening way of looking at what can hinder and support healing and recovery. And this is information I really wish I'd had when I first got sick with ME, CFS, fibromyalgia. I'll share a powerful strategy for breaking patterns of anxiety, which will explain why one of the core things that is driving our anxiety. And I'll also explain how people have softened or really shifted their symptoms. You know, I've had people who've got better very, very quickly, literally some people in one day. I've had other people who took longer, okay? And, you know, I was one of those people who took longer, and I've spent the last, since 2006, do the maths, 16 years helping people with ME, CFS, fibromyalgia. So I've learned a lot, and that information that I've learned would have helped me, I believe, recover more quickly. So I'm going to share a kind of way of looking at root causes of illness. And it's really important that what I'm sharing is not dogmatic. I do believe there's a room for humility. Often practitioners say the root cause of ME, CFS, fibromyalgia, long COVID is nervous system dysregulation. Now, that might be the case for many people, all right? But I think it's not necessarily very humble to believe that they or I know all the reasons why someone might get sick. So you have to use your judgment and recognize whether nervous system dysregulation is an issue for you. Okay. What is clear is that chronic nervous system dysregulation can result in illness and disease. Okay. Some people say, you know, oh, there's nothing wrong with your body. I literally this week interviewed someone who had an unquenchable thirst and was drinking extraordinary amounts of water to try and quench that thirst. I'd say that that person had some very real physical problem that was going on in their body. It wasn't imagined. And I, at times, had debilitating fatigue, particularly after eating food. I would feel completely exhausted. And it's only when I saw a doctor trained in functional medicine that I got more insight into why that was happening. Okay. So what I would say is the physical experiences you are experiencing are real. Okay. And I kind of think it's kind of gaslighting to say to people, there's nothing wrong with your body, when clearly there are things that are wrong with the body. What is clear is that it is possible to make improvements, and people have made full recoveries. And the way they've done that is what I'm going to be exploring in this video. Okay. So I'll share a kind of formula for what I feel are the simple steps that we need to take in order to help regulate our nervous system. And when our nervous system is regulated, it has the capacity to do important healing work. Okay. So the model I'm sharing isn't necessarily linear. And that'll make sense when I share it. Just to let you know, this image here, I didn't ask AI to create an image which gave me hair, but that's exactly what that is. That's a picture of me with hair on it. I didn't even ask for that, so that's quite interesting. So, all right. So this is the model that I want to talk about. Let's start. So we're going to start at the bottom where we're talking about triggers. You know, consider what it is that triggers you, okay? It'll be different for different people, but some people, they get triggered when they experience symptoms. They get triggered when someone talks to them in a particular way. Let me define triggers. A trigger is anything that activates a physiological response. The result of that is that we experience sensations, and this is the initial raw data gathered by our sensory organs, okay, eyes, ears, skin, nose, tongue. They detect stimuli from the environment. And then our brain processes these sensations organizing them into meaningful experiences. We call those perceptions. Okay. And this also involves recognizing patterns, objects, etc. Okay. Then we experience emotional responses. So emotions are complex reactions that involve physiological arousal. Okay. So I invite you to consider, what is your relationship to emotions? How comfortable do you feel expressing fear, anger, upset, sadness? So if you look at this list of emotions, I'd like you to consider, which emotions do you feel comfortable with? Which emotions do you feel uncomfortable being with or expressing? Okay. So let me know in the chat. A lot of people find it difficult to experience fear or anger, frustration, shame, humiliation, guilt, jealousy. They feel shame around feeling things like guilt. Okay. And as you can see from that list, the list on the left hand side is much longer than the list on the right hand side. Okay. So consider that. What is your relationship to those emotions? I know for me, like, recently I've been noticing a lot of anger has been coming up. And I suspect that at some level, my psyche is saying, it's safe for you to feel these feelings. And in the past, I suppressed feelings of anger. But I'm also learning that I have to learn how to express my anger in a constructive way. Because some of us, if we've repressed a lot of anger, when it comes out, it can be explosive. All right. So it's really important that we learn healthy ways of expressing our emotions. It might be if we have to challenge someone's behavior, setting boundaries. That can be uncomfortable if we're not used to doing it. But with practice, it can become more powerful. And one of the interesting things that can happen is that when we set boundaries, when we express our emotions, we can feel empowering feelings, which can be energizing. Okay. What's interesting is that if we're not very comfortable with emotions, then they can leak out in interesting, intriguing ways. So, for example, I know if I'm watching movies, I have at times become very emotional watching a movie, and that's almost like it's a safer way for me to express that emotion. Let's just go back. So let's say we experience a trigger, okay? And if we make sense of that trigger, then we can actually release that emotion in our body. Now, consider that some of those emotions on the left-hand side that we just looked at can activate the fight, flight, freeze response. If we discharge that emotion, then our body goes back into a state of equilibrium. Okay. And if we develop those healthy boundaries signified by that uh, oval type shape round the body, then it's more comfortable for us. It's easier for us to express our emotions, set those boundaries. But consider, if we don't release those emotions, they can get stored in the body. Okay. So maybe we're in situations where it's not comfortable or safe to fight. We can't run away. And so those emotions get stored in the body. Okay. And that can result in symptoms. Okay. Peter Levine, who's a trauma specialist, says that our muscles get tight when we don't express our emotions, because it's like we're kind of locking them in. Okay. So the muscles don't function properly. The body now is having to deal with an additional stressor. Okay. And Dr. John Sarno said that when that happens, when the muscles are getting tight, the the muscles aren't getting the oxygen they need, and possibly not getting nutrients. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. Okay, so if we're faced with a difficult situation where we're not getting our needs met, we can suppress those emotions. Okay, and if we're in environments where it's not safe to express ourselves, then what starts to happen? Imagine if you've got a pressure cooker, that pressure cooker starts getting filled up with unprocessed emotions, and that leads to dysregulation of our nervous system. So in an ideal world, as I say, we would have the support to express ourselves. We'd maybe have a parent who's understanding, who's able to make space for us and validate our emotions, and we would release those emotions. Okay. And then the body would return to that regulated state. Okay. The body returns to that regulated state. Now, if that doesn't happen, then this dysregulation of the nervous system can affect the way the body functions in profound ways. Okay, it affects our energy production. So the body stops producing and storing energy. It affects our digestive system. So we're more likely to get irritable bowel syndrome, nutritional deficiencies, nutrients aren't getting to the cells, and this can affect our energy production. The immune system is suppressed. Our clever thinking is suppressed, and our sleep function is suppressed. We don't achieve deep, refreshing sleep. So when we are able to shift those emotions, then our body can start to heal. Okay, we can experience a reduction in the intensity and duration of symptoms. Okay, had clients who said, actually, I feel like I can more of my body is getting healthy, and as I say, we can get into that state where we are in a more healthy, functional state. When we are able to express our emotions, take appropriate action, then this activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and this switches on our energy production and storage. It switches on the digestive system. So now your digestive system is working properly. It can actually heal, because when we're in that stress state, the blood leaves the digestive tract because the brain thinks we need to fight or run away from a dangerous situation. So our digestive system starts working. Our immune system starts working. Our thinking is switched to clever thinking. Okay. And we achieve deep, refreshing sleep. So it's really important, therefore, to be able to identify our emotions, to be able to feel our emotions and to process our emotions. Okay. Now, one of the things that can happen is when we're not comfortable expressing our emotions, we can leave our body and we get caught up in our mind. We create beliefs that help us make sense of our situation. So let's say, for instance, a child isn't being looked after properly. That child might develop the belief that this is happening because I'm not good enough. I don't deserve it. Okay. So beliefs are the interpretations or assumptions we form based on our perceptions and past experiences, and they filter how we understand our perceptions. So, for example, based on past experience, you might have the belief that if a dog's barking, it's dangerous. If a dog in the past bit you when it was barking. Okay, so our beliefs can be supportive or they can be limiting. If we have limiting beliefs, that can generate stress in the system. Okay. And this can operate on a conscious or subconscious level. Our beliefs can be below our conscious awareness. Okay. And as I say, we create beliefs by having that experience. I didn't get my needs met. So we create those beliefs. 3 core beliefs that we create are: number 1, I'm not lovable; number 2, I'm not enough; number 3, I'm not deserving of a great life, of love, of health, of happiness, of wealth. Okay, that can result in us developing secondary beliefs. For example, my point of view is not important, my needs and my feelings aren't important. And so this changes the relationship we have to our emotions. We learn that it's maybe not okay to express our emotions, to be angry, to be upset. This can result in adaptations. So we become non-confrontational. So we develop certain strategies. We develop a belief: I mustn't rock the boat. Okay, it's not safe for me to do so. And that can mean we develop certain behaviors. Okay, some people become people pleasers, some people become perfectionists because they think that's how they're going to achieve love and approval. Okay, they develop coping strategies. So this is where we get into behaviors that can become habits. Okay, so for example, if I feel upset because someone has stepped over my boundaries, rather than push back and set boundaries, I find ways of coping with those uncomfortable emotions. This might include numbing. This might include kind of addictive patterns of behavior, binging on biscuits or chocolate, or smoking or drinking, etc. And these are ways in which basically we've gone from feeling an uncomfortable emotion to developing a behavior that becomes a habit to protect us from those uncomfortable emotions. Okay, so let me say a little bit about values. Values are principles or standards that guide behavior and decisions. They develop over time from the beliefs that we create, and they might be influenced by culture or society. Okay, so for instance, you might value safety and security, so you prioritize avoiding risky situations. That might be, as I said, avoiding confrontation. You might develop this notion that I've got to be a good person, and therefore you become a people pleaser. Some people develop overachiever perfectionist behaviors because they believe that that's what they need to do in order to be a good person, to be approved of. Okay, so quick words about our thoughts. Our thoughts are a way of making sense of what's happening. And some people develop a very, very strong intellect. They're very cerebral. They're disconnected from their body. So it's really useful that there's 2 parts of our thinking brain. The problem solver, that might say, okay, I'm feeling some emotion here, I need to take some action. And the problem solver part of the thinking brain can decide on steps to take. So there's the problem solver part. Sorry, okay. I'm not able to write very well with this, so I won't try. There's the problem solver, but there's also the problem creator. The problem creator starts saying, oh, they must be behaving towards me in this way because I'm bad or wrong. And now we feel shame. So this is thoughts generated. So that's why there's an image of a brain with the heart. So these feelings are coming from our thinking. So they're distinct from emotions, which are our authentic response to some trigger. Okay. So for instance, if you open the front door and there's a hungry tiger licking its lips because it sees you as breakfast, then you're going to have an authentic response, which is fear. And that's going to happen more quickly than your thinking response, which results in the feelings of anxiety. Okay, so this is a more primitive part of the brain that gets activated. All right, so as I say, we can develop behaviors as a way of distracting ourselves. to help us ease those uncomfortable emotions. It might be, as I say, binging on stuff, addictions. Some people I've worked with even recognize they're addicted to their mobile phones. Some people get addicted to gaming, alcohol, sugar, and this can lead us to developing strategies that become habits. Okay. So anytime I'm upset, maybe I distract myself. One of my strategies used to be to watch, let's call them gentlemen's movies when I was upset. And it was a way of just distracting myself. And once I understood, I used to be embarrassed about that. But once I understood that it was a way of kind of soothing myself by just having some excitement rather than feeling these uncomfortable sensations, I was able to be more compassionate towards myself and recognize that that was a pattern that was helping me avoid emotions. And actually, it was safe for me to feel those emotions and to sit with those emotions. And, you know, I have learned to become more comfortable with that emotion. Okay. So I don't have the same need to indulge in those distracting behaviors. Okay. So, and, you may be aware of Matthew Perry, one of the actors who was in Friends. He had an alcohol and drug problem, and what struck me is that that was his way of dealing with emotions. And I don't know what help he got with that, but sadly it didn't help him break that pattern, which kind of ultimately cost him his life. That was his crutch. Okay, so let's look at some solutions. So how do we solve all that? What strategies can we use to help the body heal? So when I first had brain training, when I first had MECFS, I learned brain training strategies, and I learned a stop technique. And the idea is that if I had an uncomfortable emotion, behavior, thought, I would just say stop to it. And I would shift my state. I might take myself to a beach and imagine feeling relaxed and calm and confident. And that helped to a degree because it did shift my physiology and that did support my healing. But what I came to understand is that I wasn't really addressing that trigger in a meaningful way. And if I thought of that part of me that was being triggered as the wounded part of me, then actually I needed to take care of that part of me. Okay. So what I learned is that I had to learn to connect to the part of me that is wise, and that part of me could listen to that part of me that was feeling triggered, that was feeling wounded. In a resilience coaching call this morning, I was talking about this idea that these triggers that we experience are signs of where we're not yet free. And once we can make sense of our perceptions, our sensations, our emotions, our beliefs and values, the way we're thinking, the way we're generating what we call thought generated emotions or feelings, we can make sense of our behaviors and habits and we can change them. So I realized it's really important that the part of me that's getting triggered needs to be seen rather than pushed away, needs to be heard, needs to be understood, needs love and acceptance. And when I was able to do that, that part of me felt soothed. Okay. And as a result, that would shift my nervous system state. So I believe it's important to do the following 3 steps. Number 1, learning to connect to our body. When we do this, when we can cultivate feelings of safety, when we can make space for the sensations we're experiencing, then that can help us build that connection to our body so that when we do get triggered, it's easier for us to make sense of the sensations, the emotions we're experiencing. Sometimes that's challenging for people to connect to their body. So I was working with a client this week and we were exploring really small ways of connecting to the body. So it might be just connecting to your hand, just bringing your attention to your hand and just noticing the sensations in your hand. If you need to start even smaller than that, you could just start by focusing on the fingernail on your little finger and just practicing checking in. What does that part of my body feel like? Now you might say, actually, I don't have much sensation in my fingernail. Okay. But this is just a way of practicing connecting to our body. I was working with someone a couple of years ago nearly, and she was in a very bad way. And she was suicidal, and we practiced just really simple strategies to connect to the body. One is just clenching her right fist, clenching her left fist, clenching her right foot, clenching her left foot. She just practiced that throughout the day. And over time, she was able to connect to more of her body. And when I spoke to her about 6 months later, she was in a much better place. And she was actually now optimistic and was starting to work on her business. Okay. So I've talked about other techniques in the past, just gently tapping your body. It's just a way of, it's actually good for your body because it helps blood flow. It helps just release any tension in your body. And from a Chinese medicine perspective, we get sick when our blood flow is restricted. Our blood flow gets restricted when we're in a state of stress and tension. So that's a really gentle thing you can do. I've made a video about Qigong, which is something I learned when I had ME/CFS. Again, you can do it in a really gentle way. In one video on my YouTube channel, I talk about a 1-minute technique that I would do a few times a day. And it always, when I was really poorly, I felt better for that. So first step, connecting to your body. Okay. Second step is we need to process our experience, make sense of the perceptions that we have. Ask the question, is this perception that I have useful? So for example, if I'm driving along, someone cuts me up. If I decide that that person is being aggressive and they're disrespecting me, then that's going to activate some anger in me. And that's based on my perception of that situation, my interpretation of that situation. If I choose to interpret that situation as this person is stressed and that's why they're behaving like that, I know what that's like to be stressed. I don't need to take it personally. That's now changed the way my physiology reacts to that situation. If I'm experiencing a symptom, I might be saying to myself, I failed. I've overdone it again. Will I ever learn? Will I ever get well? And here's the thing, when we ask questions, we tend to answer it. So we say to ourselves, at some level, maybe I won't get well. And now we're feeling more stress. Okay. If I perceive that symptom as, this is my body just letting me know that right now, whatever it is I was doing, in the way I was doing it, maybe I was doing some activity, but I was also really stressing, thinking, is this going to make me worse? Then I need to change my strategy. Okay, this is just good information. All right. We need to identify our emotions. We need to identify our beliefs, our values, our thinking. Am I in problem creator part of the thinking brain or problem solver? We need to recognize that some of our feelings are as a result of our thinking. We call them thought-generated emotions or feelings. We need to explore our behaviors and consider, is this behavior really supporting me? I know that some of those strategies that I had for dealing with my uncomfortable emotions weren't supporting me. And when I learned to start to just tune into the emotions and practice techniques, for instance, the flip the switch, which is a way of just grounding myself, coming back into my body, connecting to the part of me that's wise. One time I fell asleep for an hour and a half. In the past, I would have distracted myself and that would have just tired myself out, more digging myself deeper into a hole. And we can develop more favorable, useful behaviors, which can become habits that are life affirming. Okay. The third thing we need to do is take action. Okay. Consider that we experienced trauma, either big T trauma or small T trauma, when we were little because we didn't get our needs met. So it's really important that we prioritize and think about our needs and explore healthy ways of meeting those needs. So I said I would share a powerful strategy for breaking patterns of anxiety. Well, the key strategy here is meeting your needs. Often we experience an emotional trigger and we don't pay attention to that. And it's like we're abandoning ourselves. And when we ignore the body's signals, your emotional brain takes note of that and it turns up the signals. Okay. It turns up the emotions. It turns up the sensations and symptoms if we don't listen. Okay. So it causes more distress in our system. Because this is a repeat of those old wounds where we didn't meet our needs. So my invitation to you is to consider it is now your job to meet your needs. Now, some people have this expectation that other people should meet their needs. That is a bonus if other people do that. But ultimately, I believe we have to take charge and say, actually, it's my job to meet my needs. Okay. And that might include asking for help. Okay. But we've got to be in the driving seat there. And at the beginning, I also said that people have softened or shifted their symptoms. And the way they've done that is by following these steps that I've just talked about. Okay. Really being able to identify emotions, limiting beliefs, and shifting them. Some people describe that their symptoms have softened. Sometimes people say, oh my God, my symptoms have completely disappeared. I remember having this experience when I started learning some of this stuff, that I was experiencing flu-like symptoms. And by practicing the techniques that I've been talking about, within about 3-4 hours, those flu-like symptoms completely disappeared. And I would have expected them to have lasted another week or so. All right. So let me just share the screen one more time. So as I say, this is a way of just looking at what's going on, recognizing there are different components. When we're triggered, we experience sensations, perceptions, emotions, and how we respond to that trigger is influenced by the beliefs, the values, the thoughts we have, the feelings we've had, our behaviors and habits. Okay. So it is a circle, if you like. And as we learn to pay more attention to what's going on and take action, we create that healthy boundary, that sphere around the body where we're taking better care of ourselves. We're setting boundaries for ourselves and with others when necessary. And that can help the body heal. So consider that our emotions can trigger the fight, flight, freeze response. Okay. Activates the sympathetic nervous system, and the freeze response is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. When we shift our emotions, process our emotions, that can help us activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and that can help us heal. So if you've got any questions, let me know in the chat. So Sam says, what do you mean by meeting my needs? Is this sitting with emotions? So what I want you to consider is that your emotional brain will send you information in the form of emotions, in the form of sensations, in the form of symptoms. And it's a way of letting you know when something feels good, something doesn't feel good. So let's say, for instance, I'm sure you've had the experience where someone says or does something and you experience a lump in your throat. Let me know in the chat if you've ever experienced that. I'm going to put money on it that the answer is yes. That's your body's way of telling you that there's something about this situation that doesn't feel right. And so if I think about that situation, I'm thinking, well, actually, my body's telling me that this situation isn't okay. This person's behavior isn't okay. I need to take action. Okay. Maybe I need to set a boundary with that person. Maybe I need to leave the situation. There have been times when I've got engaged in an argument and I realize actually this isn't getting anywhere. I need to say, let's pause this conversation right now and come back to it when we've both had a bit more time and space. And if someone is behaving badly, I might say, look, I feel like we need to have a conversation adult to adult. This doesn't feel like that is what we're having at the moment. So I'm going to take myself away from this situation. Does that make sense, Sam? Does that make sense to you? But your body's communicating to you all the time. You mentioned that you don't feel boredom. Some people with ME/CFS, they are lying in bed, they're feeling frustrated, they're feeling bored, and that is a sign that they need something which they're not currently getting from just lying in bed. All right. So it might be they just need to spend a bit of time doing something fun or interesting, a bit of learning, reading a book. I was chatting to someone who likes doing art, and they might just do it for a little short while, just a really small amount of time. When I had ME/CFS, I realized I needed to play the guitar every day because it was a way of just getting out of my head. And if I didn't play the guitar every day, there were times when I didn't pick up my guitar for a month. Then when I did pick it up, I didn't want to stop. So I'd play for too long. I'd play for an hour and then I'd feel really fatigued. Whereas if I just, to begin with, played for 5 minutes, then, I was getting some pleasure, some enjoyment. I was getting out of my head and, it's almost like my soul enjoyed that activity. Okay. So I really invite you to consider that identifying our needs and finding constructive ways of meeting our needs, and that might involve some negotiation with another person. If someone is stepping across a boundary, I might say, you know, would you be willing to ask me? I remember one time getting really triggered because someone just said to me, it'll be easier if you come and pick me up. And I got triggered by that because at that point in time, I wasn't very good at expressing my emotions. So I locked up my emotions. I didn't like expressing my emotions because I didn't like conflict. And even though in this situation, the other person was not behaving in a respectful way, I just swallowed all my emotion. It created a lot of tension in my body, and that affected my energy, okay, quite significantly. With the benefit of hindsight, if that happened now, I would just say, sorry, what did you just say? I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable about what you said because it feels like you're trying to persuade me that it'll be easier for me to come pick you up. I'd really be happy to come pick you up if you just ask me, because it's actually not true that it's easier for me. All right. So we can learn to feel on our feet and process on our feet. Okay. I learned this from someone who's really good at kind of being in touch with their emotions. If someone says something to them that she doesn't feel comfortable about, she'll say, oh, I don't feel okay about what you've just said. Why is that? I feel uncomfortable because, and then that gives her the opportunity to think on her feet. All right. So if you've got any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll pause there. If you do want to know more about this work, I'm happy to have a chat with you. I have trained in something called Mind-Body Reconnect, which is all about doing this work. I also have a course for people who want a kind of step-by-step 12-week course where you learn things in bite-sized pieces. If you'd like to know more of that, about those things and what might be a good fit for you, really happy to have a no obligation chat. So I don't see any more questions, so we'll pause there. Thanks for watching. Do let me know what your takeaway is. What is an action you're going to take as a result of watching this video? If you like more tips, do subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and you're welcome to join my Facebook group. So thanks everybody for watching. I say do leave a comment. Let me know what your takeaway is. Let me know what your action is. Keep going. Dare to dream big dreams. Wishing you great health. Bye for now.